And Rose, my guest today is John Lee, who is the CEO and co-founder of Wealth Dragons, which teaches people how to increase their asset-based wealth and create passive income via real estate investment and a bunch of other ways. We're going to talk about that. You come from very humble beginnings. The story I heard is that you had Chinese parents up in the north of England that ran a takeaway business, and then you started investing early in the property market. By 27, you had made your first million. You also are a motivational speaker, and you've shared the stage with such greats as Mr. Bill Clinton, Alan Sugar, Richard Branson, and Jack Welch. I first found out about you when our former guest, Ty Lopez, posted a video of you in your Lamborghini, and we had Ty on here, and it was a great show about 2-3 months ago. Ty can talk, but he's a fascinating guy. You know, what I like about Ty is he doesn't really sell himself as kind of a motivational guy or a I'm going to change your life guy. He just talks, and he has some really unique wisdom about that. So we'll get to Ty later. But John, thanks so much for being here, and welcome to London Real.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You know, I think I had tried to contact your people and get you on, so I'm always glad when I can hook up with people I wanted to. But you've got a great story, and I know a little bit about narrative. You know, my story behind London Real is I was a greedy banker for 10 years, and I got sick of it, and I quit my job, and then I started broadcasting from this studio. And so people kind of identify with that, but I think people identify with your story because they see you, you know, you're a pretty young guy, but you're out there, you know, speaking, you're investing in property, you're teaching people, but you start from this, you know, Northern England kind of, I've seen pictures of you in, you know, in the takeaway restaurant cleaning and stuff. So before we get to Wealth Dragons, can you tell me about your background and tell us your story? And yeah, tell me what really happened.
Well, it all started off with my parents. You know, I started off as a little kid working in a Chinese takeaway. And so
it was a Chinese takeaway.
It was a Chinese takeaway,
okay,
yeah.
Right, okay.
So, you know, when you're a kid, when you come from those beginnings, you start off as chopping mushrooms, peeling, onions, and then you get upgraded and promoted to a dishwasher.
Okay.
And
how old were you when you started?
Oh, God, I must have been 7 years old.
Okay. And were your parents first generation or second generation?
First generation.
First generation.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, going through that whole life and seeing my parents, I never really saw my parents at the age of 11 years old, because they would, start work at 5, they wouldn't come back, and they would finish work at like 12 o'clock. And there's actually my aunties and uncles that brought me up.
Wow. Sounds like Americans with that work ethic.
Yeah. And I remember, working 3 jobs. I would work in a job in telesales, then I would work in the weekends, I would go and work and sell shoes, and then in the evening of the weekend I would go to my mum's Chinese takeaway and I would work. And it was one day I remember just seeing my parents work really, really hard and just like looking at them. And when sometimes you look at your parents and each day they get older and older and older.
Yeah.
They start to get the grey hair and they start to get those little dots that happen on their face. And as I saw that, I thought, my God, my parents are getting older. I'm not really spending much time with them. And it's funny because all my aunties and uncles all around me were doing the same thing. They were having children. They weren't spending time with them. They'd be working in the job. And when I looked at it, I thought, there's got to be a better, faster way of making money. And my parents said, yeah, there is. You need to go to school and you need to get a job. And so,
which is the classic immigrant mindset. My kids are going to be better educated than me, and then they're going to make it. Right. Okay.
Right. And so, for me, I thought, okay, well, let's try education. So then I worked really hard, and I'm dyslexic, so I found it really, really hard going through college, university, because I literally can't write. Even now, when I'm looking at words, I can't read them.
Wow.
And it's very difficult for me. And so going through this education and watch my parents slave away at the woks and just seeing them literally work just so I could have an education. And then it's funny because when I graduated, I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to get a job now because our parents have paid so much money. And when you graduate from university, you walk out with debt, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought, I'm going to get a job. And what happens? You don't get a job. You pay this money to go to university and you're supposed to guarantee to get a job, but it doesn't happen. So what do? You go out and you look for more jobs, and eventually I did get a job. I started from £21,000, and within 2 years I got up to £36,000 when I was working in central London.
Right.
And it's like working in London. It's like they're like people like robots. They're walking around kind of like this, and they're not really paying attention. People are just doing their own thing. And I would wake up every day at 6 o'clock. I would, my commute to it would be 3 hours. And I would work every single day till about 7, 8 o'clock at night. I wouldn't get home till 10:30 at night. By that time, my partner at the time would either be in bed and my dinner would be in the oven. And I thought, this is like not a way to live. And
this is like early 20s for you.
Early 20s.
Okay.
And the funny thing is, this is what I'd worked for. I'd worked all this in university and to make my parents proud and really to say, hey, you know, all the stuff that you're doing, you're slaving away. Well, you know what? I'm going to make you proud. And I walked out with a first. But nowadays, a degree doesn't really mean anything. You know, it's kind of like, well, you got a first, so what? Do you know most graduates that graduate now, they're not even working the jobs they want to work in? I remember I was in Malaysia. He sent his daughter over to film school over here. He spent 4 million ringgits bringing his daughter over here. Now she works in a coffee shop. You know, and it's like, if you're going to teach these things at school, and I always look at this, why do people go to school? Because they want to get a job. Why do we get a job? So we can earn money, so we can live, right? Why do we live? So we can have a life. But really, think about it. People, they're not really living. They're just really existing. They're like doing everything. They're not human beings. They're human doings. They're doing stuff every single day.
What's the line from Fight Club? Working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need.
Right.
That's what Brad Pitt says, right?
Right.
But yeah, and when you're in London, you see it in central London. You do see this kind of a drone mass that are kind of, your life is being lived for you. You don't know why you're doing it. You think you're doing it to make your parents proud. But like you said, the whole point of life is to live it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and you know the funny thing is, and I'll never forget this. Well, when I went from that 21,000 to 36,000, when I started the job at the end of that month, when I got my paycheck, because I was doing all the calculations, right? And when I got my paycheck, I looked at it and I thought, this is not right. So I called HR department and I said, can I just make sure that I'm on a £36,000 salary, right? He said, yeah. I said, why is it that I only have this? And he said, well, you got to pay this much and this much and this much. And you know the funny thing is, I worked out through the entire year that I would be paying about £10,000 worth of tax, plus national insurance and all those bits and bobs. My pay every single month was only £2,000 a month, right? Minus, again, all the taxes. My outgoings was £1,200. That left me with £800 a month. Divided by 4 weeks, that's £200 a week. Divided by 7 days, that's £27 a day.
Jesus.
In a £36,000 salary.
I can hear all the people quitting right now out there in the world. All right, so, but, you know, for you to make these realizations yourself is tricky. I mean, you know, without attending courses or reading books, I mean, did you just have this epiphany where you're like, I don't want to live the rest of my life like this? Or how did you change things?
It's funny, one of my best friends' name is Darren. And, you know, we go to university together, and he works in London now still, and he's very successful at what he does. And
it's not Darren Brown the magician, is it?
No.
Just checking. All right.
And so, you know, we always had this thing of like this, do whatever it takes to get the result. Like university, we'd turn up at 6 o'clock in the morning before the caretaker. They would let us in, and we wouldn't go partying. We'd really study. And so we did the same in our careers. And it's funny because at one point, I got a job in the same company as he did. And it was my birthday, and he gave me this book, and this book was called Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh, no. Okay.
and I read this book. This book said, oh my God, you're trading time for money. What happens if you get hit by a bus tomorrow? Your income's going to start. Oh my God, you're right. And I remember not being able to go on holiday because, you know, if I wanted to take leave, especially my background is working in TV and film and animation and films.
Right.
And so it's a pretty tight deadline. So you couldn't just take 2 weeks off whenever you wanted. You know, you would have to finish the project, make sure the project's finished, then you can take leave. And so I remember asking for time off, and my manager at the time said, there's no way. There's no way. I said, I just need a week. And there's no way. This project's this. And I remember reading in the book that most of us were trading time for money. We work so hard for money, but what we need to do is we need to make money work really hard for us.
You're quoting Kiyosaki there.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So are you the Chinese English version of Robert Kiyosaki?
I don't know. I've been called many things.
But yeah, it wouldn't be bad if they called you that.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
Okay, so I sat down with Robert 2 months ago. He was giving a talk at the Excel Center, and in between his, 2-day talk with his wife Kim there and all this stuff, I grabbed 30 minutes with him backstage, right? Yeah. And I sat down with him. Now, I was familiar with the book, but quite honestly, I had never read it cover to cover. Yeah. But I researched him and I talked to Robert, and he's a fascinating guy. I mean, he's the real deal. I mean, he was on Oprah in like the 90s. Yeah. I mean, like, come on, he's been around. Yeah. And then I listened to his audiobook afterwards, and I listened to Rich Dad, and I did it like all in one go afterwards. And it's a powerful book. Yeah. And it's something very special and unique, right? It's a different way of looking at things.
Oh, absolutely.
And at the time, it really hit as a different thing, and it's all about making money work for you, and it's really about not being brainwashed with this system that we've been taught to kind of grow up and aspire to, and then we find out we're not happy, and then we don't know why, and then we drink too much or whatever, and then then we die, right?
Right.
It's just kind of what happens.
I mean, when I read the book, I thought, wow, this is fascinating because, there are other options out there. And if you think about it, we go to school and, I go to my parents, I say, hey, Mum, can I have some money? She said, yeah, go and speak to your dad. So I go to Dad, say, Dad, can I get some money? And your dad would say, yeah, go out and get a job. He doesn't say go out and trade Forex or invest in property or start your own business or invest in this for something different. They'd say go out and get a job because that's how everyone's been conditioned. I remember one time I was working Mum's Chinese takeaway. And an onion, when you have an onion, there's different ways you can cut the onion.
Yeah.
So the way my mum used to cut it was to carve it out and then cut it and then cut it, in two halves. I said, Mum, why do you do that? And I said, why don't you just cut it down the middle, carve it out that way? It's faster, it's quicker, it's safer, right? Less effort. I said, oh, well, it's the way that your grand's always told me to do this. And just because something has been done so long, it doesn't mean it's the right way. And so we've always got to start thinking about it. So how did I come with that epiphany? Well, it wasn't an epiphany. It actually came down to pain. I hated traveling to London. I hate commuting.
So you were commuting from Manchester at the time, or what?
No, from Guildford.
Okay, Guildford.
Guildford.
Okay,
So
Guildford.
it's still a long travel, from door to door when you're parking up. And for me, it was the pain. There's one time I remember, I'll never forget this, Leicester Square. I walked downstairs into the tube station. The whole tube station was empty. I blink, and then in split second, there's all these people appear from nowhere speaking different languages. I thought, okay, so let's walk to the other end so I can get a seat. So the tube comes, the doors open, and it's full. And I kind of like squash myself in like a sardine.
Yeah, it's a humbling experience taking the tube at rush hour here in London.
And this is in summer, right? You know what it's like in summer, sweating.
There's no AC on a lot of these.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the thing that really topped it off the most was this guy turned around, he put his hand on the rail, my head was in his armpit. I could look up, the smell was like this horrible BO, right? And just for me, it's like, why do I go through this? And there was one time when I went to work where my supervisor sat down with me and told me that I wasn't going to do my job, and therefore, if you don't book up your ideas, you're not going to be working here anymore. And
okay, so you hit rock bottom, and you had read Kiyosaki's book, and so you dove into the real estate market. Is that what happened?
Yeah.
And what happened? Was it your first go? Did it take some time? I mean, we hear these stories about real estate riches. Was it that easy? Did it take some creativity? Talk to me.
It's kind of like this. It's simple, but it's not easy. It's like losing weight, right? It's simple to lose weight, eat less, exercise more, but no one does it. And it's like with real estate, it's simple. There's only 3 strategies. Number 1, find the deal, right? So is that easy to do? Yeah, because they're everywhere. But most people don't know that deals exist. Deals are everywhere. If we could go out now, within an hour, we'd find a deal. Just by knowing to look for the right things. Just by telltale signs. And so one of the first deals I bought for $164,000, and I sold it for $222,000. And I was like,
you still remember the numbers?
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I still remember that. And then the one after that was, again, one of my first deals. I bought for $85,000, and I sold it for $185,000. I was like, my God, I just made like 3 years worth of my salary in a space of 3 or 4 months. It was crazy. And it's like that paradigm shift, because sometimes you hear about this stuff and you think it sounds too good to be true. And we've been conditioned to think, well, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. But that is not true. There's people out there that are doing things creatively that we don't think about.
But I'm guessing you had to really conquer some fears there, because when you're going to pull the trigger on that mortgage, that's when a lot of people walk away, right?
I remember sitting there with my partner next to me, and she said, if you sign that, we're going to be committed. And I was this close to not doing that deal, and same with my friends around me. I'll tell my friends, I got this great deal. And there's one in Camberley. I said, look, this property is worth $165,000. It's just been offered to me at $124,000. So I tell my friend, the first thing my friend says to me is, what's wrong with it? Right? Whereas if I was to tell an investor, go, boom, that's a good deal, snap it up. You don't even have to think about those deals. When those deals come along, it's like, you got to think about it. You're in the wrong business. But there's this thing about hanging around people who are not doing the things you want to do. You talk about fear. My God, I was surrounded by fear. It's like every time I'd take 3 steps forward, I'd be going back 10 steps, and I'd be second guessing myself, and that little voice comes into play, doesn't it?
Because of your peer group, you mean?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And so, but once you get over that fear, do you understand that okay, when you did your second deal and your third deal, when you get to sign, you're like, okay, I know this is going to be scary. I know this is going to be scary, but I know I'm going to push through it. Is that what makes you different than people that don't do these deals?
It's all about habit. Some people say to me, oh, John, you shouldn't be doing that. I said, why? Because it's risky. I said, well, it's risky to you because you don't do it every day. But it's not risky to me because I do it every day. And I remember watching this documentary on Muhammad Ali, and he was really old, and he's going to get into fighting, and someone said, Muhammad Ali, shouldn't you retire now because you're at the top of your game, and if you have another fight, isn't that risky? You could get knocked out. And he said, it doesn't matter because when I get into the ring, I've been fighting for a long time. So I know that I got a pretty high chance of winning. It's not risky to me because I do it every day. And so the difference between, I guess, myself and other people out there is I've just been doing this stuff often, very often. I mean, not even that long, 10 years I've been in business, right? But what I do is I do things every single day. So someone says to me, John, I've been playing the guitar for a year, right? How many times do you play a day? Well, I play once a week. Well, I play the guitar every single day for half an hour. So who has more experience? So it's stuff that you got to do every single day. When you do it every single day, it becomes a part of you. It becomes routine, like we were talking about before.
And that means you're pushing yourself to taking those risks and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. You're not just looking at the property listings. You're going out and pushing yourself to be a better entrepreneur and a better...
Yeah, I mean, the way I don't just do property now. I invest in a lot of different types of businesses.
Okay.
And when I invest now, I go, right, well, I'm this age now. I'm pretty young. So if I invest in this, if I don't invest in this now, I don't want to be 70 years old and go, oh my God, I should have took that deal. I should have invested in that. Because what I say is that if you don't take risks now, you'll be forced to take risks when you're older.
Yeah, amen to that. Amen. And I say that when I meet people that are very low risk profiles, I say, look, you're taking a risk right now by not doing anything.
Right.
And Jeff Bezos calls it the regret minimization trade. So Amazon is his lifetime regret minimization, because he doesn't want to wake up at 7 years old and say, you didn't do a damn thing with your life. You just worked for IBM and you never took any risks. So that's what he's doing, with his life, by doing that. So tell me about Wealth Dragons, because you could have just stayed where you were. You could have probably just continued, doing real estate and doing more of these deals and become more wealthy. Yeah. So why get out there and get on stage? Why get in front of people? Why teach people how to do this? Well, where'd that come from?
When you make your first million, people think, oh, wow, that's, you must retire now and do things. And that's what people expect. $1 million doesn't mean much. And it doesn't mean much. But at the time when I did retire. I mean, I was financially free. I didn't have to work.
Right.
But the funny thing is, you would call your friends up on a Wednesday. Right? You say, hey, let's go out tonight. Oh, I can't, I'm working. Okay, well, next weekend, let's fly to Paris for the weekend. Oh, I can't, I don't have any holidays left. And the funny thing is that when you're free, everybody else isn't free. So you got to find something to do with your life. And the thing is this, and one thing I figured out in business, if you focus on money, you don't get money. One thing I realized is you focus on adding value, and that's what brings you money. Right? And you don't do it because you want to do it for the money, you do it because of the value. When I made that first million, I thought, okay, well, shall I just quit or shall I carry on doing other things? And it was from talking to other people and people saying, complaining about their lives. And I thought, you don't have to complain. Do you know you can do this, 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 and this to be able to get out of your job? If you hate your job so much, why are you still doing it? And so I got so frustrated with people, and they would come to me for advice and say, oh, John, I want to do what you're doing. And I would sit down with them, I would spend my time with them, and I would teach them. And then a year later, I say, have you done that yet? And they say, no, I haven't done it. So I always used to think about, why is it that there's a group of people that say they're going to do something but don't do it, and there's a group of people that say they're going to do it and they do it. And I found the difference is their why, their reason, is their motivation.
Right, because now in your Wealth Dragons class, you don't teach people the how, you also talk about the whys, right?
The why is like 80% of it.
That's it. I'm guessing people think they're coming to a Wealth Dragons seminar to learn about real estate, but I'm guessing you end up teaching them about themselves.
That's one of the big things. Okay. You see, it's not just about real estate. It depends on what your wealth profile is. Some people don't like to manage property. Some people don't like to mingle with people. Some people want to sit in their homes and make money. Well, there's a strategy. You can use Forex for that, for example. Right. Forex is a great strategy. And so one of the reasons why I do this is we were never taught this stuff at school. We were never taught to trade Forex. We were never taught to invest in real estate. We were never taught to invest in businesses. We were taught to get in a job, work for someone else, and make them wealthy. Even Harvard MBAs, they get taught to go in there and make other people rich. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But when people come to me and they complain about their lives and they say, and I tell them to do something about it and they don't do it, I just think, why is that? So the reason why we started Wealth Dragons is people kept asking me these questions over and over and over again. And I thought, you know what? Instead of spending one-on-one time with you, let's leverage my time, right? Because what happened is, even at that point when I made my first meal, I thought, let's invest in other businesses as well. So I started that, and I started, writing journals and writing books. And then people would say, hey, can I ask you this question? I say, you know what, I'll just send you an email. Right, and it's got everything in there, because the questions would always be the same. Right. How do I raise finance? How do I find deals? What businesses should I invest in? How do I make passive income? How do I find a mentor? It's the same questions.
Okay. And then you made videos next. No.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So I made videos, and then I started getting the message out there. So why did we start Wealth Dragons? My message is very simple. Anyone watching this show right now can become financially free. Anyone. And anyone can become rich if they want to. They are two different things. There's financial freedom to buy back your time, and the time you can use to make you rich. And that's what I did.
Okay. So those are two different things.
Two different things.
First, you want to get your time, and then if you want, you can trade your time for riches.
Correct.
Okay.
Right? But the thing is, I always realized that, people say, oh yeah, money doesn't buy happiness. Well, technically it doesn't, but I tell you, money's not everything in the world, but it ranks pretty high there with oxygen, right? We live in a world of money, so we have to play the game of money. If we don't play the game of money, the game will be played against us. I see a lot of people working so hard, friends of mine working in organizations, paying money to pensions. And we all know about pensions, they're relying on it. But when they retire, it's going to be a different story. We need to teach people how to manage their finances, how to manage their financial education, how to create wealth, how to take care of the next generation. Like my kids, when, I don't have kids yet, but when I do have kids, I've already bought investments for them.
Right. So with Wealth Dragons, how do you, you've seen this where you've given people advice and they don't do anything. I've had that experience as well. So when you go to teach your first class, or when you're lately, doing your Wealth Dragons courses, how can you shake them out of that? What can you do in those day or two that you have with them in a seminar standing that'll actually get them to make the changes? Because, so often people just don't.
Yeah.
But a lot of people want to come for entertainment reasons. Yeah. A lot of people want to come because they want to tell themselves that they tried something, right?
Yeah,
but getting people to make real change is hard.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
One of the things that we do is we do something called results in advance. So when people come to me, like if I pick up this phone and show you how much money I'm making now, even while we're having this conversation, people would think it sounds too good to be true. They think it's like a scam, right? Because they don't know this stuff. Like, you can take your mobile phone and you can be making money right now. Watching this show, by the time this show finishes, you could be making money. And it sounds too good to be true.
Me?
No, I'm just saying.
Okay.
But there's so many different vehicles out there that people can do. So one of the things that we do is we give people results in advance. So, for example, some people come to our program. We had this lady come to our program. Her name was Rochelle. By Sunday at 6 p.m. or 6:30, she left the event. By 10 o'clock that night, she'd already made £600. By 8 a.m. in the morning, she'd already made £1,200. And it's like, people go, how is that even possible? She even posted on Facebook. She was showing her accounts, this is how much I made.
Did she rob a bank? Or what she do?
Well, we taught her a strategy for creating passive income. But she never thought about this before. Because what happens is, if you and I walked to someone on the street now with a £50 note and said, give me £1 for this £50 note, they'll be doing this. They would go, well.
And is that because people are risk averse, or because let's go deeper on this, because the psychology fascinates me. Is it because they're risk averse, or is it because they fear failing, or do they fear success? There's a lot of weird things going on here when people tell you, oh, it's a risky deal. Yeah. I'm not sure, John, about that. I mean, what are they sub-communicating to you?
What they're really saying is, I don't want to fail. Right? I don't want to try this, so therefore I'm going to say this stuff to protect me, because that's what your brain does.
Right.
You find shortcuts. The problem with your brain is, it's kind of like, if you think of it as a different entity, it's like your worst enemy.
Right.
Because it knows your deepest secrets, it knows your weaknesses, it knows how to manipulate you and talk you out of stuff.
Right, so it's constantly trying to trick you.
It's constantly trying to trick you.
And you can't trust what it says.
You can't, and that's why, sometimes you hear people talk about a gut feeling. Like, when I get into a business deal, normally it's a gut feeling. I know this is going to be a great deal.
Yeah.
I know it's going to be good.
Yeah.
And there's two voices that speak. You got your voice here and you got a voice here.
Right.
So you just got to follow that gut feeling.
Follow the gut, right? Because when you look back on the gut feelings from throughout your life, it's probably got like up near a 70-80% hit ratio, maybe higher, right?
Well, it's like this sixth sense. I mean, I can't explain it. I'm into how powerful the brain. I recently watched a film called Lucy. How the brain can get to 100% and it can do all sorts of things. But I think that most people right now they're not even trying. They're not even like when I decided to quit my job and become an entrepreneur. The question I ask myself is, am I good enough if in 1 year I don't do anything? In 1 year, am I good enough to get my job back? And the answer was yes.
Okay.
So but people aren't even given a try because they don't have the support group. They don't know how. They don't know where to start. They don't have a mentor. They don't have someone holding them accountable.
Right.
I mean, you're in great shape. So you have.
Thank you.
You've got this accountability on yourself that I got to train every day. I've got to eat right every day. And we had a drink later, and you tell me all this fascinating stuff about it. That's a commitment, right? But most people don't have that. And they've got to learn to build that up because they're in a habit of doing things that are not getting them the results.
Okay, talk to me about peer group. Should you should you get rid of your friends? I mean, I had someone recently that says, go through your mobile phone and delete all of these numbers of the people you don't want in your life and then don't call them back. I mean, do you think you should take an active, look, I had Tim Ferriss in that seat 2 years ago and I said, Tim, would you have New Year's resolutions? And he said, you know what, Brian, I'm thinking about the things I want to eliminate from my life. I never heard that before. And so he was thinking about things he wanted to stop doing, people he wanted to stop hanging out with. Do you go that hardcore?
I probably wouldn't go that. Well, I made a decision when I left home to go to university. I had two choices. I could have gone to university in Manchester, or I could have gone miles and miles away. And I chose to go miles and miles away because it means that I wouldn't be seeing my peer group as much. There's a saying that says that people can stay in your hearts, but not in your lives. And really, it's a very simple question, Brian. The people you hang around, are they benefiting you, are they empowering you or disempowering you? And I call these red lighters and green lighters. Red lighters, every time you come up with an idea you tell your friend, they go, that's never going to work. Oh, yeah, okay, no, it's impossible. These are red lighters that stop you from doing things. Green lighters are people that say, that sounds a good idea. You should give it a shot. You should give it a go. Why don't you try that? These people encourage you. So I would say to people, write down a list of all the people you hang around.
You know what the best way I found? Go through your phone and look at the last 10 text messages or 15, because those are the people you're constantly communicating with. And then, as John says, put a red light next to them or a green light, right?
Yeah.
And then make a digital decision. Is that what you're saying?
Well, make a decision. Life's all about choices. But the problem is, it's really hard to break out of that because that has become, in effect, a habit. Because when you hang around people, sometimes when you're sick, you moan. And the reason why people moan is because they want attention. And their belief, their connection is, okay, if I don't get attention when I'm not sick, so let's just be sick all the time, and then I can get lots of attention.
Again, your brain making a trick on you.
Correct.
Have you heard of this 10-day challenge where you don't complain for 10 days? It was another Ferrisism. Yeah, try it out. I was trying it like a week ago. I don't complain that much anyways, but challenge your friends to do it. It's 10 days and you don't complain about anything. And just find how it changes your whole day. So you can't no longer complain about the weather, the tube, the nothing. So when you see someone, you can't complain. You have to talk about something else and just watch how it flips your frame of mind. Anyways, that's just a thought. Talk to me about mentors. Everyone asks me, Brian, how do I find mentors? I had Ryan Holiday in that seat, who was the mentor of Robert Greene, the guy who wrote 48 Laws of Power and the 50th Law with 50 Cent. And, he was like, Brian, I never asked Robert to be my mentor. I just volunteered for him and I did all this work for him and then I got all this knowledge. So how did you find your mentor? How do you tell people to find mentors?
It's tricky.
It's tricky.
This is a very interesting point. One of my first mentors, his name was Yung Tan. And he was a mortgage broker. And I remember calling him and I said, I got this property deal. And he looked and he said, that's not a property deal. I said, what do you mean? He said, this is a property deal. And he told me the difference between a good deal and a bad deal. And I said, wow, you really know your stuff. I said, how many properties do you own? And he told me. I thought, wow, and you're pretty young. I said, hey, do you think you can sit down with me and, I'll buy you coffee and, you can teach me this stuff? And his response to that is no. And I was like, okay. Why are you being so rude?
Because he's busy, maybe.
Right. Well, these guys are, and one thing about mentors is they're busy. They have businesses. They're doing their own thing.
Right.
And
but successful guys like to see young, hungry guys.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And so here's the thing. I said to him, okay, well, when are you free? I'm never free. I said, all right, what's it going to take for me to sit down with you for a few hours just to pick your brain? And he said, if you want to spend a day with me, right, or a weekend with me, 2 days, it's £10,000. And I looked him in the eye and I said, sorry? And he said, £10,000. And I said, I don't have £10,000. He says, that's exactly the reason why you need me as your mentor. I said, why? He says, because you can't even find £10,000 for your business. How are you going to find the rest of it for your life? I said, good point. So I went home and I told my partner at the time, and I said to him, look, this guy wants 10 grand to coach me. And she said, that's crazy. It's crazy. And so I went back to my corner and said, look, can you not just sit down with me just for an hour? He said, it's going to take 2 days. You want to learn this, if you're serious, put some skin in the game. I said, what do you mean skin in the game? He said, look, I can teach you for free, but I know you're not doing anything. I know that you're going to take this stuff, you're going to go back to your life, and there's no hurt money. I want you to put the money where your mouth is. Find me 10 grand in the next week, and I'll coach you. And I thought, there's no way. I mean, 10 grand. So, and here's the thing.
This is 10 grand sterling for all you Yanks.
Pounds, yeah.
Right, pounds, right.
Right? And I remember sitting there thinking, how am I going to do this? And here's the interesting thing. The better question you ask yourself, the quality of the question determines the quality of the answer. So, right, where can I get 10 grand from? And so I went to all these places, and I just thought, there's no way. And I remember looking out of my window on the drive, and I saw my car. Honda S2000 convertible, 6-speed, 256 brake horsepower. And I worked so hard. Yeah, right. I worked so hard to get that car. So I thought, okay, well, if I pay him, because I spent all the time justifying, I pay him 10 grand, I get the knowledge, I shortcut it, and then I can make more than that. And so I didn't tell my partner at the time. So I sold my car for £15,000. I paid him 10,000. I was left with 5,000 left, which then I spent buying another car, which wasn't such a great car. And those 2 days with him, after 2 days, 6 months later, I bought 35 houses. because listen to this, he knew a way of buying houses without having to use money. And I was like, boom. If you don't need money to buy houses, how many houses can you buy? And that's how myself and my business partner has transacted hundreds of property deals just by using the same methodology. I still use these same methodologies today in Holland, in Malaysia, in the UK, all around the world.
So he took your money, this mentor.
He took my money.
I
paid
respect
him 10 grand.
Okay, and he took it. He was like, thank you very much.
Boom.
And then he gave you a full 2 days. He probably mentored you for even longer than that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had some support after that as well.
Right, right.
Emails here and there. And I thought, wow.
And how old were you when you made that call, that 10 grand call?
24 years old.
Jesus, man. Well, you went all in.
Yeah.
I mean, risk comes reward. And it's fascinating. You mentioned this 10 grand price point. I just spent a week up in Scotland with an interesting man who has a castle. And you go up there for a week. His name is Dan Pena. Mm-hmm. He's known as the $50 billion man. And his price point is 10 grand as well. Mm-hmm. And I got back and there was like 16 people there. A lot of people had heard about him on London Real. And a few of my friends I've talked to since I got back, I'm like, you should go up there for a week. Dan Pena, sort your head out. And they're like, I can't afford 10 grand. And I'm like, dude, you make 6 figures. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, oh, they give me all the reasons they can't. Yeah. I'm like, you're going to get 100 to 1,000 times return on that in a few years. But they're like, no, I'm not going to do it.
Because people can't see the value.
But, or is that a way of them not doing something? Is that an excuse to not doing something? Is it a reason not to fail or a reason not to succeed? I
just think sometimes when you're earning 6 figures, people are comfortable. They get comfortable. They're not pushing themselves. Like, one of my idols is Bruce Lee, right? No relation, by the way.
That's funny, man.
In fact, my nickname at school was Brucey.
Okay. Why was Bruce Lee your idol? He's many people's idol, but why was he yours?
Because he's always striving to be the best. Look at Tiger Woods. He doesn't want to be the best golfer in the world. He wants to be the best golfer that ever lived. And that's a different mindset. Like for us, if I'm every single day not pushing myself every single day, some people think I'm crazy. Sometimes I sleep when I'm only exhausted. It's not something I condone, but it's something I enjoy doing. I'm passionate about it. It's not motivation. Motivation wanes. Passion, you want to wake up after 3 hours sleep because you want to get on the next thing. I don't know about you, Brian, but I always think there's a sense of urgency in life. At the age of 27, actually, when I made my first million, I thought I was invincible, driving Lamborghinis, you can't touch me, I'm bulletproof. I almost died in a car accident in the same freaking car, right? And at that point, that was a wake-up call for me. I thought, wow, I've got all this knowledge in my head. I've got all these people around the world that I can touch and change. If I left the earth at that point, what value have I left to earth, to people? What legacy have I left? Like, now I know that I train thousands of people around the world. I have books, I have videos with millions of views on there. I run events, I've got CD programs. Now, if something was like to happen, a part of me still lives on that can educate the next generation. And if we can educate the next generation, this is when my business partner's daughter inspired me. His daughter's 9 years old. She's got a business. It's called Heart's Eggs. She buys eggs for £1 and sells them for £1.50. She gets 40 quid a week. She's like 9 years old. Imagine if all our kids did that. Imagine if all our kids understood financial education. We would change the next generation. The next generation would evolve a lot differently than where we are now. In the Chinese culture, they say 3 generation rich. First generation makes the money, second generation keeps it, third generation spends all the money, and it starts again. Right. We don't want to do that.
Right.
We want to make the money and have that legacy last. My kids, when they're born, when I pass everything down to them, they're not allowed to sell my property empire. They have to keep it and just live off the cash flow.
So it's like in a trust or something like that.
Yeah. You know.
Tell me about the Chinese background. Your company's called Wealth Dragons, which kind of has some Asian kind of themes to it. Yeah. Your parents are first generation Chinese. You know, what is it like growing up in a Chinese family? We've seen these books in the U.S. called Tiger Mom. Yeah. You know, being children of immigrant parents. I mean, I'm an immigrant in this country. Most Americans are immigrants. So you come with this mentality of I'm going to work so hard and I'm going to put my kids through something better. And what's it like coming from a Chinese background? What are the positives? What are the negatives?
It's very strict upbringing. Okay. You know, if you didn't do things right, you know, and a lot of people watching this who are Asian understand what I'm talking about here.
Right. But is that good? Because you look at kids in England sometimes, maybe in the North, and like these kids haven't been disciplined their whole lives. Yeah. And you're like, Jesus Christ.
You know, this is a fine line. I mean, a lot of Chinese people are not disciplined. You know, I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong. What I'm saying is that, you know, we got to find ways to discipline our kids in some respect.
Because you can discipline the creativity right out of them.
Right. I mean, like my parents used to make me sit down, and in Chinese school, I would have to memorize a whole book. I didn't even know what I was learning, but I'd have to memorize the whole book. Okay. And, you know, that gave me a lot of discipline to the lessons I learned today. You know, and treating people like you want to be treated, or always trying to help people, or always trying to be, again, is competition good? I personally think it is, because it keeps you on top of your game. My mindset is, if I'm sitting and doing nothing, I think to myself, if I was competing against myself, what would I be doing differently right now? Right? And so it kind of gave me that competitive mindset that when all the Chinese parents sit around the Chinese restaurant having a meal, they say, oh, well, my son is this, and my daughter is this. Ha, ha, ha. Right?
Is that what it's like?
That's what it's like.
Okay, cool.
That's what it's like. Oh, my son's a doctor. My son's a accountant. My daughter is a dentist. You know, then that's, when I grew up, my parents wanted me to be an accountant. Right. Which, I'm terrible at maths. That's why I have a CFO, you know? So coming from a Chinese background, I think I'm blessed to come from a background like that, because even my parents were really hard on me. It taught me lessons in life that I now use in business, the way I discipline myself, where I go and be the very best I can be, where, you know, like you shouldn't waste time, you know, where you should always invest for the future. You know, and I think in our society, people are very short term. They want like instant gratification. And sometimes you got to think long term. You got to know, hey, that's what I want, and here's what I got to do to get there. I was never bright at school. I mean, I was the kid who sat in the class with a special needs teacher. You know, I was the kid that everyone would laugh at. You know, I would get all the questions wrong. You know, I remember one time there was 2 queues. You had the A students on one side and you had the D students on the other. And I remember all the A students pointing and saying, "Oh, you're thick, you're stupid, you're retarded."
You're dyslexic as well, so that doesn't help.
Right.
Talk to me about motivational speaking. I'm giving a TED Talk next week. I got like 4.5 weeks left. I've been practicing, but it's something that everyone wants to be better at speaking, and most people are bad at it, including CEOs and founders and stuff, because it takes practice. But you teach people how to do it, as well as doing it yourself. So what have you learned about your own journey? Like, what were your first steps of getting better yourself, and how do you teach people how to do it? Are there just basic things? Are there simple things?
Well, there's a template. Like, when you go on stage, the audience is skeptical. But also, when you go on stage for the first time, you're nervous. That's a bad combination. Right? So whenever you're speaking to the audience, people go, "Oh, I'm really nervous." "Oh, well, what if I say this wrong?" It's not about you. It's about the audience. The audience, they don't. Most speakers walk on stage and go, me. They don't care about that. They care about what's in it for them. Right? So one thing you got to do when you walk on stage in front of an audience, you got to grab everyone's attention within the 10 seconds. Right? If you don't have them at the start, you don't have them at the end. Right? So when you're speaking on stage, you got to simplify things. Like, I take very complex matters and simplify them, and I always think of the communication as this. A 6-year-old should be able to understand what you're saying. So if you want to practice in front of a 6-year-old, and then at the end, ask them if they understood it.
Literally get a 6-year-old.
Literally sit there and draw the diagrams and say, does this make sense? Right? And another thing as well is like most speakers, they use PowerPoint. But the thing is, the audience is not, if they're using PowerPoint, they're looking at the PowerPoint presentation. They're not looking at you.
Right.
And when you are there, they're looking at you. That's when you have your power to influence. Because when you're talking, you're really selling yourself. You're selling your idea. You're selling your concept. You know, you're selling the audience why they need to listen to you and why your message is so important. Everyone has a message. Everyone has a story. One thing I learned, speaking in front of thousands and thousands of people, is you've got to be able to take that message and relate it to the audience. Like when I stand on stage, I don't tell people how rich I am. I tell people how miserably I failed in business and what it cost me. Because they don't want to hear about the success stories. They want to hear about the stuff that was really challenging to me.
Right.
The things that, where you almost went bust, where the moment you almost gave up, because the audience wants to know that you are like them. And the moment they know that you are like them, and that's why I come to this concept called story selling. Right? Not storytelling, story selling.
Okay.
You don't teach the how. When you teach how, people are sitting there with itchy hands. When you teach them how to do it, it's kind of like you're taking the itch away. So you got to sell the why, not the how. When you sell the why, remember, the why is the 80% reason why people are going to do something. When you're on stage, you want to inspire people to action, to do something. They don't want to just stand up and give you a standing round of applause. You don't want that. You want them at the end of this presentation, they're going to go out and their life will fundamentally change.
Right.
So how do you do that? You've got to tell a story in a certain way. And there's 4 parts: beginning, middle, climax, and end.
Okay.
Right? And you have the turnaround.
I'm going to take some notes here. Yeah, all right, go ahead.
And also you have...
the turnaround.
Yeah, so the turnaround. So it's the story of the turnaround. In fact, when you create your presentations, there's actually 7 points. First point is introduction. So one thing I do is I always ask a question. So most people, they sat there like this, right? Really skeptical. So I asked a question. I said, raise your hand if you'd like to learn how to make a lot more money. You can't say no to that, right? So people have to uncross their arms to raise their hand. So that gets rid of resistance, right? And then you want to ask a second question, because this engages the audience. So the first thing you got to do is engage the audience. Most people make the mistake of saying, my name is John Lee and I'm this and I'm the CEO and blah. They don't care. They care about what's in it for them. In the talk today, I'm going to show you 4 different ways on how you can earn a passive income. Boom, done. Are you interested? Yes, of course you're interested. So
that's the introduction. And then there's 6 more steps.
Introduction.
Right.
Also, in the introduction, you have to thank the audience. Appreciate them, genuinely thank them. And when you're talking from stage, it depends how big the audience. Like I've spoken in arenas of 10,000 people before. So when you speak, you have to wait for your message to land.
Right. Okay.
And you'll hear Obama do this. When you see Obama speak, there's always pauses because that pause waits until land. So you got the introduction, and then you got to do the what's in it for them. So in this presentation, I'm going to show you how to do. I'm going to show you one way to earn a passive income without having to trade time for money. I'm going to show you how to invest in an asset that increases in value. I'm going to blah blah blah. Right. So you show the what's in it for them. Right. Then you earn the right, because the question they're asking in their mind is, why am I listening to you?
Okay, right.
What's your credibility? Tell me. So when you tell the credibility, you got to tell the story of the struggle, right? And how the result that you want right now in this room, I've been through that. I'm going to tell you the struggle, and this is what happened before. So it's kind of like a before and after. That's the story.
Chinese restaurant is a good way of doing it. Okay.
Right. And then the 4th part is the how. So when you're teaching the how, always turn it into a model. If you look at Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Successful People, or highly effective people, that book's still a bestseller. Why? Because it has a model in there that when your message, when you teach it to someone, it has to be how do you pronounce the word? Replicable.
Yeah.
Replicable.
Okay.
It's a
Right.
tongue
Okay.
twister.
Okay.
So when you teach the model, at the end of your presentation, someone else should be able to teach someone else when they leave, because that then builds your name. So the model that you teach on how they do it, it's got to be a model. Right? And that's the mistake most speakers make. They don't modelize what they do, therefore the message doesn't spread.
Right.
And the 5th part is that you need to segue, right? So this is a transition. And the transition is for the call to action. So in your TED Talk, if you're talking and you want the audience to do something, maybe you want to raise some money for charity. Maybe you want your message is this charity here, they need money, you need to give money. Maybe your product, you're trying to offer a product or a service. Maybe you just want to get people to think differently and do something and make a change. The 5th part is that transition. So you transition from what you're talking about to what you want them to do.
Right. Okay.
And the sixth part is, hey, here's what you can do. Here are the options for you. And 7 is go and do it. It's the call to action. So that's a 7-plate. And every time I speak, I always talk about these 7. My entire presentation is done in these 7 points. I don't use any PowerPoints. I just speak. And you speak from that. A lot of it's authenticity. A lot of speakers go on stage and they're trying to be someone else. They're trying to be, big other speakers, but just be yourself.
Right, because people see through that very quickly. Like you said, you got about 10 seconds. You probably have more like 5 seconds.
Correct.
When you first go on. Tell me about your low moment. I'm guessing crashing the Lamborghini wasn't the best day.
No.
Probably because you were worried about the car more than you.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I don't know. So was that a low for you? What was the time where you were like, I think I'm going to quit? Although I don't think that's probably something you would do. But what was the lowest for you?
I remember early on in my property career, I learned this way of buying houses really quick, and it was like almost a miracle. It was like, my God, I could just literally buy a house, boom. But what I didn't realize was that when you buy too many houses, that's also a problem. And I remember having, how many was it? It was about 8 houses that I'd bought that all needed fixing because my strategy was, I'm going to buy them, I'm going to fix them up, and I'm going to sell them. Right? But what I didn't realize, when you buy too many at once, and you have to fix too many at once, and you have to fund too many at once, that's a problem.
Because you're subject to the market moving?
No, because let's say you're putting £20,000 into each house.
Yeah. Times
that by 8. Then each house takes 3 months to fix up and renovate, right? So then you've got holding costs.
Okay.
Now you're paying a mortgage on that. It's like, my God. And I remember sitting there and thinking, what am I going to do about this?
Running out of capital.
I was running out of money. I mean, my bank account was like up here. It's like, every month was like this. I'm sitting there sleepless nights, not being able to sleep. I put on so much weight, and I was like, I thought myself into fear of paralysis. I mean, I literally was paralyzed. And I remember sweeping everything under the carpet, kind of like, oh, they'll sort themselves out. Until one day I get another phone call. One of my houses has just been turned into a cannabis farm. So someone had taken one of my houses and they'd turned it into a cannabis farm, and the damage on that property was £30,000. And I thought, my God, my bank account was looking like this right now.
You couldn't afford this.
I just couldn't. I was like, it's just, and here's the thing. It's like when you're in desperate times, calls for desperate measures, right?
Right.
And you get very, very creative. And this is where you just got to pull yourself out of that deep hole. Because in my mind, I was like, you know what? I can just let everything go into bankruptcy.
Right.
And then I can recover in 5 years because I can start again.
Right.
I had all these thoughts going through my head. But then on the flip side, I could see all the people that told me, it's too risky, you shouldn't do this, and you can't do this, and you'll never do this. And I just saw their faces, like, I still remember them now, just like pointing.
And you didn't want to give in to that.
And I didn't want to give in to that because, not because I would become bankrupt if I gave up, but failing this would also fail my friends and family.
It's a Chinese guilt.
It's a Chinese guilt thing. It was like, my God.
But it saved you.
My God, it saved me a lot of times.
Okay, so saving face and the name, the family name, and shame and disgrace, those are things that you know well.
Yeah.
But you can use them as tools.
Oh, my God, they are so powerful,
Okay,
bro.
but they can't. But as long as they don't keep you from acting, right? Because you've seen that the extreme of that is people not going outside of the box and just staying on the traditional way. Talk to me about comfort zones, because I watched one of your lectures and you drew the circles and the comfort zone, and comfort zone gets a lot of lip service these days, but I don't think people think about it enough. And I think you said in one of your talks that when you're not outside the comfort zone, then nothing's happening. You talked about competing against yourself. It's actually fascinating because there's a guy, Dorian Yates, 6-time Mr. Olympia from Birmingham, up near where you're from. He said he always competed with himself, and that's how he became the best. And when he won Mr. Olympia, he's like, Brian, I didn't celebrate because I was supposed to win, and I went back home and started lifting again. So that's what he did. And I find a lot of the successful people that sit in that chair do compete against themselves. They don't want to hear everyone tell them they're great. They're like, that wasn't good enough. So talk to me about the comfort zone, because I'm the same way. If I don't feel like I've put something on the line that week or risked it, I don't feel like I was good enough that week. How do you get out of the comfort zone? Because the reason it's called a comfort zone is because it's not nice to get out of. Right. So even the most steadfast guys and achievers fall back into it, right?
Well, when I say this, a lot of the viewers are going to think I'm crazy. And
maybe they do already, but you're driving a Lamborghini. That's okay.
They're going to think, that's no, we shouldn't do that. I mean, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but this is what I do. I always put myself in situations that I can't get out of. right? In the Chinese saying that says that when you're in a boat, you need to break the boat and swim to the island. Because when you break the boat, you either drown and die or you survive. And I'm not sure if other people agree with that, but that's just something I always put myself in positions where I cannot fail. I have no, failure is not an option.
What's an example of that?
So there's one tech project that I did. I took all the money, I put it in there, and I thought it has to work. It has to work. If it doesn't work, then I'm going to let everyone down, because I'd raise a lot of money for that,
Right.
and just so happens it's done very well.
Okay.
In my job, it's funny because in my job I'd always wanted to be one of the top animators, and on the day that I quit my job, I was actually offered a £60,000 job, £60,000, and I'd worked so hard to get this position. And she said to me, John, if you don't take this position, I have to give it to someone else. I said, right. So I had this whole conversation going in my head. Do I take this £60,000 job and get the role that I've always wanted, or do I lose it, be ashamed in the industry because I'd let someone else down, and then do my own thing? And that was another thing when I made that conscious decision. And I always say this is like, people are not committed. They say they're committed. They're not committed. They just kind of want it, right? If you don't commit, you're telling the universe, I'm not ready. The moment you commit is the moment you start getting a lot of opportunities. I mean, that's what's happened for me in my life. When I commit full on, for some reason I get luckier.
Things happen,
Yeah.
right? Because people feel that energy. That's that sixth sense, maybe. They know that you're serious.
Yeah.
Okay, so comfort zones. How do you regularly get yourself out of yours? How can people learn to get out of theirs? How can they know when they're out? And the funny thing is, once you're out, you end up going right back into the comfort zone, right? Because it becomes your new comfort zone. You've done that in one of your talks with concentric circles, right?
Yeah.
So talk to me about that.
Well, it's kind of like a ripple. You drop a pebble into a pond, you get ripples, right? And the thing that people are fearing the most is actually an indicator of what they need to be doing next. So if they're sitting there thinking, I should get into business, but they're too scared, that's what you need to be doing next. If you're thinking, I need to quit my job, that's what you need to be doing next. Because once you quit your job, that's it. You're letting go of security. This is a difference between...
You broke the boat.
Yeah, freedom and security. Do you want security or do you want freedom? And personally, I think if you're working in a job, that's actually more risky, because someone can turn around to you like they did to me and say, you're fired. And then you have no job. So how do you expand your comfort zone is you need to do things that are really uncomfortable. Like, they're uncomfortable, but I'm not saying, hey, if you're scared of jumping off a cliff, you should jump off a cliff.
Because there's always
I'm not
the extreme.
saying that. I'm not saying that.
I used to have an expression on with someone on this show, and he used to say, Brian, go to where the fear is.
Yeah.
He always said that, and then I'd be like, okay, so you want me to go stand in front of a bus? So there's a medium there.
Yeah, I mean...
But usually your fears tell you where you should go.
It's an indicator.
Okay, again, that instinct.
Like, if you want to invest in property, but you're too scared to get on the prop ladder, that's what you should be doing.
Right.
If you're too scared to have children and have a kid and then become a father or a mother, that's what you need to be doing. Right? And so your body tells you things. Like, when you're not well, you get a headache, you get a cough, you get a sore throat. That's your body saying, hey, you're not well. That's an indicator. And what people do, they get a few aspirins, take it. That's not what you should be doing. You should rest. So your body, again, I think there's something spiritual about your body that gives you, I believe in my life I get a guardian angel. Some presence that always guides me in the right direction.
You do believe that?
I do believe that.
Interesting.
There's always been times where I've been really low, in my really low times. And just sometimes I just feel really lost. I don't know what to do. But somehow I get out of the situation. It's like a miracle, and you've got to really believe in this stuff. Like, if you believe you can do it, you're right. If you believe you can't do it, you're still right. It's all down to your self-belief. There's a test that measured people who are optimistic and pessimists. Pessimists, if you put them into a test, they'll do better than optimists, right? But optimists overall do better because they have no ceiling. They're always striving for something bigger, something bigger than them, achievable than them. So one of the things I believe is that how you get out of your comfort zone, you got to listen to your body. You got to listen to your gut. You got to listen to the mind and make a calculated guess. Right? If you're going to do something, do some research. Have your own proof, because that's what I needed actually when I quit my job. I needed, in my mind, I was like, let me see if I can do a few deals first in a job. And if I can do that, imagine how many I could do without being in the job. So people need to set the criteria of the proof on what they need, what needs to happen to them in order for them to know that they need to break out of the comfort zone.
But go in the direction of the fear.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We had a guest on here named Jeff Thompson, and he has something called the fear pyramid, and you write down like all the different levels of your fear, and then he just, he tells you to just start knocking each one of them off. So no, it's an interesting thing to think about where your fear is. Most people want to go the opposite way of their fear, but the sooner you take care of that, the better. I got a question for you about passive income. I met Robert Kiyosaki, so that was a big moment, and then I listened to his book afterwards, and it really hit home. And he has this whole idea of make money work for you, and his whole thoughts about the quadrant and the tax system, and how you'd be stupid not to do these things. And I just had a thought about passive income. Again, I'll mention this Dan Pena, my mentor, I asked him about passive income when we were on the seminar, and he said this. He said the problem with passive income is it makes you passive, and insert explicative in there for Dan. And I was wondering what you thought of that theory, because I know you're involved in tech startups, some other startups we can't talk about right now. I mean, you love risk. As you said to Ty, you go where the risk is. And so what do you think about that theory? Because passive income ultimately isn't as risky. Should you believe in yourself and put all that money on you and go for that deal, go for that speculative thing? Tell me, where do you land on that?
Passive income is something I think everyone needs, because what people don't realize, Brian, is that time is your biggest asset. People devalue their time. Like I have cleaners that come around to my house, they clean the house for 8 hours, right? If I were to clean the house for 8 hours, I can pay someone £10 an hour to do that, right? So people have got to realize their worth. What is their hourly worth? If you can pay someone less than what your hourly worth is, pay them to do it.
So outsource everything.
Outsource everything. Okay. Have people do the things for you, because then you get back your time. Because time, the richest person can't buy back their time, right? Every second I'm sitting with you now, I can't get back. Every second that goes by, I will never get back forever, right? So you got to take that risk. Right? You gotta create passive income that gives you your time back, to allow you to do the things you want to do in life. I always make this joke that life is like a box. We wake up in a bedroom, it's a box. We go downstairs, we have cereal, it's a box. We watch TV, it's a box. We get into a car, it's a box. We go to work, it's another box. We sit at our laptop, it's a computer, it's a box. And then eventually we die in a box, right? We want to when we're on our deathbeds, we want to ask ourselves a question. Did I live my life fully? Did I do the things I wanted to do? Do I regret anything? When I'm on my deathbed, I want to say, I don't regret anything. And that's why passive income is so important, because it allows people to live.
Yeah, but does it make you passive? Because you don't seem like a passive guy. I know you started off with passive income, and I'm sure you have a portfolio of passive income, but you go for the risky deals. You go for putting yourself on the line.
Yeah.
So do you think it's a blend? Do you think it's for certain people? Do you think people should start off passive and then go? Because you are kind of wasting your time a little with passive income, because it's slow and passive.
Yeah.
Should you not be putting it all on red?
Well, here's the thing. That's a good point. So it's like I said before, there's a difference between... Because passive income gives you financial freedom, but it's what financial freedom will do for you. It's like when you ask people how much money you want, to say, I want $1 million. Why? Because I want to have this, and this. I said, do you know you don't actually need $1 million to do that? You could do that with 100 grand, 200 grand, 300 grand. So it makes you passive, but it gives you choice. That's the difference.
Okay.
You can choose to be passive if you want to, but like I told you before, when I achieve financial freedom, everyone's working, so I'm bored. What do? Let's do something else. Right. So it gives you the choice to do the things you want to do.
Right. It gets you a better alternative than working for the man, as we would say.
Yeah.
You said something to Ty Lopez, and I really want to get you to explain this to me, because I didn't get it, and I still haven't got it, and you're going to translate this for me now, I hope. You said, you'll pay for the best advice you can afford.
Yeah.
And you said that to Ty, and I couldn't understand what you meant. So I was going to ask you, tell me, what does that mean?
Okay. Sometimes when you want... I'll give you an example of this. So my house, I want to paint the house. So in my mind, I was like, I can pay someone to do this for £200, but I can paint it myself for £20. So I'm going to paint it myself, right? There's damp there. So what happens? It's perfect. 2 weeks later, the damp starts showing through again, right? And I get asked this a lot when I'm on TV, newspaper, radio. They always ask me, what would you do differently? I said, look, everyone thinks the journey from success is from here to here, this straight line. But actually it goes here, and then it comes all these squiggles, and then it goes back, and then you get there. And all this squiggle, all these things, these mistakes, the things that's taken him time, that is the stuff, that's the experience. So when I say pay for the best advice you can afford, what I'm saying is find someone who's been there and done the things that you want to do, right? And instead of you having to go through all these squiggles, you can just bypass it and you can shortcut it. There's no such thing as get rich quick, right? But there's such thing as, getting rich or getting success with someone else who's already achieved success. If I want, my personal trainer, if you look at him, he's like this, right? I know he's got the body that I want. So I pay him to train me because I want the same result he's got. I'm going to eat what he eats, train how he trains, sleep, everything. I'm going to model him. So the fastest way that you can achieve a result, when I say pay for the best advice you can afford, find someone who's achieved the result, right, and pay them money to teach you what you want to achieve.
Okay, and pay him as much as you can afford. Pay him
as much as you can afford.
Just like you paid your 10 grand to that guy when you couldn't afford it.
I couldn't afford it.
Right, but it changed your life. I mean, what's the return on that 10 grand?
Oh my God.
Millions. Okay, now I understand that. Tell me, I mean, you're a pretty introspective guy about, as far as, what does success mean? What does it mean to you? What is success for you in the next 5 years? Where do you want to be? Where does Wealth Dragons want to be? I know, you've told me about books coming out and IPOs and all this crazy stuff. Where do you want to be? And more importantly, why do you want to be there?
Okay, so if you look at Coca-Cola is $1 billion company. McDonald's is $1 billion company. Right?
Small companies compared to Airbnb, right?
Right. Yeah, small company. Okay. But there's companies out there that are making billions that are not really, in my opinion, contributing to society. Like if you drink a lot of Coke, things happen. If you eat a lot of junk food, things happen. There isn't a company out there that's $1 billion company that really makes a difference to people's lives. I know how much self-help and self-development has done for me. I know, without it, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I want to give this gift to millions of people around the world because I know that with just a little bit of information, with a little bit of action, with the right guidance and the right coaches and mentors and the right knowledge, you can be the best version you can be. There's a definition that says, hell on earth is meeting the person that you could have been.
Ooh.
Right? That is when I heard that, I was like, wow. So why don't we be the best that we can be? We're only on this planet for a short space of time. The average life expectancy in the UK is 83 years old, right? So most people retire at 65 and they have like 15 to 18 years to live. You don't want to start living then, you want to start living now. So why do I want to do this? I want to be the first $1 billion company around the world that teaches people self-education. I want there to be Wealth Dragon schools of financial freedom, like Oxford and Cambridge, but these are schools that are around that teach people, young to old. Because we can get people when they're young, immediately that starts to get that ripple effect. We do things, as Steve Jobs says, we got to do things that can make a dent in the universe, right? What are we doing to make a dent in the universe right now? Most people, nothing. But 10, 20, 30 years from now, I want the word passive income, financial freedom, Forex trading to be a household name. I want people to say, oh, well, you don't hate your job, why don't you do Forex? Oh, you hate your job, why don't you do lease options? Oh, you want to acquire property, why don't you rent to buy it? People never heard of this stuff before because they've never been taught it before. Our gift, our biggest gift, is to give people that gift so they don't have to worry about working for anybody else. So they can live the life that they want to live. So they make a bigger contribution. We have a lot of charities that we support, and the more money you have, the more money you can give. And it's like in the plane, I travel a lot, and they always say when the masks come down, make sure you put it on yourself first before you put it onto the person next to you.
Right. Even your kids, they say.
Even your kids, you can't even take care of yourself. How are you going to take care of other people?
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this, because this is not taught in the education system. It should be taught in the education system, in my opinion.
Okay, those are big goals. I love it. Who's your idol? Who's up there? Is it Tony Robbins?
I actually spoke with Tony Robbins on stage, actually, many years ago.
I mean, who do you look to? Who inspires you? Who do you want to be like? I mean, come on. He's done a lot, right? I mean, he's been out there.
My ambition is to be the Chinese Richard Branson.
Oh, okay. All right. That's cool.
I want to make the first person in the UK, Chinese, below the age of 40 years old to make $1 billion.
Okay.
Now, you look at the Mark Zuckerbergs.
Right.
The Mark Zuckerberg is like, 30 years old, and he's multi-billionaire. But what he's produced has made a difference. It's completely changed the way people live. Like, people can't even live without checking Facebook once a day. I want to create something, because here's the thing: if you got an important message to share, you have to get paid for it. Because if you don't get paid for your message, you can't continue to deliver that message.
That's the reproduction mechanism.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I think we're all born because the reason why we're not designed to live forever is because our job is to take in our head, is to pass our knowledge from here to somebody else. And I think failure to do that is a big failure in life. All the experience that we've been through in life, all the problems, all the solutions that we've discovered over time, if we don't give that to the next generation, we won't evolve. All right?
And that's your plan.
That's our plan. That's our master plan.
Those are goals. I love those goals. I ask everyone a few questions here at the end. I'm going to ask you, if you could make a phone call to the 20-year-old John Lee, I guess he was at university, maybe about to go off to his animation job.
Yeah.
Maybe he was working nights in the takeaway restaurant. And give that young man some advice. What advice would you give 20-year-old John about life?
Read as many books as you can.
Really? You've been hanging out with Ty Lopez
Ty,
too much.
That's what I love about Ty. The guy is a genius. He's reading so many books. Read as much as you can. Listen to as much as you can. Hang around with as many people as you can, right? Who want to do the things you want to do. Like, every day when I train at the gym, I'm still listening to self-development. When I'm running, I run 5 miles a day. Right? I may not look it, but I run 5 miles a day. And, I listen to self-development. Feed your brain with stuff that's not junk. Don't watch junk TV. Okay, so it's okay now and then to watch stuff, but feed your mind with positive. Feed your mind with stuff that's going to empower you. Read books, speak to people, hang around the right people, right? Practice early. I always say that the definition of success is when preparation meets opportunity. I've been blessed to coach people who are athletes who compete in the Olympics, and one thing I know about them is these guys train for years. Right? Only to prepare for that one day. When that day comes, they want to be prepared. And so you want to prepare for what's about to come. When that thing comes, don't say, oh my God, now I've got to learn that thing. Be ready. Right? That's the advice I would give myself if I could go back in time.
Right. Okay. Very good advice. We had a guest on here named Peter Sage. You should listen to his show. He's very inspirational, but he called the television the electronic income reducer. And I think he might have something there. Second part of the advice question is best advice you've ever received, business or personal? Maybe something from your mentor. I don't know.
That's a good question. The best advice I've ever received was from a good friend of mine in San Diego, actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, his name is Frank.
Okay.
And he's a very big, very big name out there. And one of the things that he talked about is everything is about marketing. Everything. Right? Everything we're wearing, our shirt, our clothes, our aftershave, it's been sold to you, it's been communicated to you in a certain way. And most businesses fail because they don't know how to market. They don't know they're invisible. It's about becoming more visible. So the best advice that I've ever been given is, John, whatever message you have inside, shout about it. When I was in property, I wouldn't tell anyone because I was too shy. I was like, I don't want them to know I'm in property because they might think this of me. No, who cares? Get your message out there. Right? That's one bit of advice. Second bit of advice comes from my business partner, Vincent Wong. And I'll never forget this.
He's your COO, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So he said to me, I used to get really upset when people used to, when I read things in the newspaper about me, I would see things on TV about me, I used to get really upset. And he said, John, a tiger is not concerned of the opinion of sheep. You're not a tiger, you're a dragon.
And did that work?
Oh yeah.
So you stopped engaging, you ignored it.
I just ignored all this negativity. Right. One thing I learned is you're never going to please everybody. It's to Justin Bieber, you either love him or you hate him. Right? It's the 80-20 rule. 80% of the people love you, 20% of people will hate you. And that's just part of the beast. That's just the nature of the beast. And that piece of advice that came to me, whenever something negative comes, I block it out. He calls it the bulletproof state. You have this bulletproof state where when people are firing bullets off you, they just bounce. They bounce off you. And there's another saying that if you're going for a run and you stop at every dog that barks, you'll never reach your destination. Right? And it's kind of like that. If you keep listening to people who keep doing this, you're never going to get anywhere. Just whatever decision you make, just make that decision right.
Okay, that's good. I love the marketing one. You're so right about that. And even in property, you should always be marketing.
Yeah.
So, and the bulletproof state is good. Goes with the bulletproof coffee, which, John's just had some of that. Last part of the question is advice to the 20-year-old that's listening out there. I mean, they're listening to you and they're like, oh, Jesus, John is doing, $1 million when he's 27. He's rocking the fast cars. What advice do you give to them about what they could do? I mean, they could be anywhere. They could be, in Brazil. They could be in China, Australia. What do you tell them?
The first thing you need to do is you need to find a group that you can hang around, a mastermind group.
Right.
Mastermind group doesn't necessarily mean the people that have already been there and done that, but in every country there's a mastermind group. Right, so find a mastermind group.
People that are pushing themselves as hard as you want to push yourself.
People who want the same result as you.
Okay.
So my badminton coach, she's England #1. Right? She's ranked 19 in the world. I chose to train with her because she's better than me. And you should, for the 20-year-olds listening right now, whatever you want to achieve, you need to play the game with someone who's better than you. That's the only way you're going to improve. And so you need to find these people. Do the internet. Facebook can connect people now. Social media, Instagram, there's hashtags of groups. Hang around with the right people, because what happens is the environment gets you. If you're in an environment of negativity, it gets you. I don't care what happens, it gets you. So when you're around positive and when you're around people that want that same result, it rubs off on you. It starts changing your belief system. The belief system, like when people said, you're never going to get deals in Guildford because I've tried there, it doesn't work. So I stopped for a while. And then I went into an agent and they said, John, you're never going to get deals in here. Why? Because I've been in this industry 21 years. No one has ever sold a property at a discount. So I put a radio advert out. Within a week, I found a deal. Right? His reality is they don't exist. My reality is they do exist because I hung around with the right people, because I found the right strategy.
Good advice, very good advice. And there's always, that's the funny thing when you talk about the real estate market, is there's so many different people with different things going on in their lives, and everyone always has a heavy motivation to buy and sell, and you just have to find the right person and the right deal. Yeah. I'd love to walk around with short issues sometime and you'd be like, that guy's got to sell. Anyways, it's fantastic. John, how do people get in touch with you? How do they check out Wealth Dragons? Is there an intro course? Is there a motivational speaker course? Talk to me. What's going on?
Yeah, if they go to, if you want to watch some videos, just go to YouTube, type in John Lee Wealth Dragons. I have hundreds of videos on there that teach people strategies. They can go to our website, wealthdragons.com.
Okay.
That's wealthdragons.com. Or they can drop me an email, john@wealthdragons.co.uk.
Okay. And they're in London based or UK based, or where do you go around the world? Or what?
We hold events all around the world, in Asia, Europe, and obviously in London. We actually have an event coming up called Lifestyle Business Convention, where we teach 4 different strategies with 4 different speakers, and they've all been there and done that, and they've got the t-shirt. They are the walking, talking testimonial of the strategy. So if people are in London, then they can go to lifestylebusinessconvention.com and they can register there, and it's free. One of the things that we do is we want to give back. We want to teach the next generation of entrepreneurs. So that's a way of me getting my message to you and to other people listening, and then for them to teach other people. I watched a movie called Pay It Forward.
Yeah.
And
Kevin Spacey, right?
Yeah, and that concept was beautiful. It's like, do something for someone else, right, and not expect anything in return. And that's one of the reasons why we do this.
It's fascinating. I got a quick pay it forward story. About a year and a half ago, I was contacted by this couple on Facebook. They're from Canada, and they're like, Brian, we want to fly to London and shoot a video about London Real. And I was like, okay, I ignored it. And then they sent another one. Finally, I was like, okay, what do you want to do? We want to fly to London, and we want to shoot a video about you. We do wedding videos, and we want to give it to you. And I was like, all right, but I'm not going to pay anything. They're like, that's fine. We're going to pay for our hotel, and we're going to shoot the video and all this stuff. And this couple flew to London. They were like the loveliest two. They had wireless mics, and they shot for 3 days and made this beautiful video with music and time-lapse photography, and they gave it to me. And at the end, I was just so blown away. And I was like, well, what can I do for you? And they're like, Brian, I'm getting teary when I think about it. They're like, we're paying it forward just the way you're paying it forward with your show. And I was like, Jesus Christ, So like they had watched 50 of my shows, and they were just like, now we want to do something for you. And then I'm totally indebted to those people for life. And it's just a crazy thing.
And by the way, that invitation extends to you. If you want to come to any one of our programs, let me know. If you want some advice on anything, just let me know. If you want to, I got a lot of contacts as well who I also believe could be on this show and also can really make a change to other people. More than happy, my friend.
Thank you, appreciate that. I think Ty calls it reciprocal altruism. That's what he calls money. So yeah, big thanks to Ty Lopez, because Ty is our 1 degree of separation. I found you from Ty, and you found me from Ty. So big shout out to Ty. He's making videos every day in LA. He's doing live videos. He's got webinars. So go to tylopez.com. Free plug for you, Ty. There you go. John, thanks so much. It was a lot of fun talking to you. I was expecting it to be fun. It was even more fun. Some of these stories are really great, and they ground your experience, because we've heard of the super successful guy, we've heard of this, I've heard of that, but unless we find empathy, then we don't listen. You know that from a given talk. So it's fantastic. If you're listening to us on iTunes, you can see the extremely good-looking John Lee on our YouTube channel, and you can subscribe and all that. And that's it. It's we say on London Real, it's about the journey. I wish you well in yours. I can't wait to check in a couple years and find out what you're up to. But I wish you all the best, John.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Goodbye.